Hello and welcome to Learn Energy Healing. This video is basically a bit more explanation and conversation of some of the things I talked about in the previous video, so please go and watch that first so that you can understand this video. So let's just go a little bit deeper into some of those concepts. So I do talk about on my website, and I've had it on my website for many years now, about the concept of things being real but not inherently real. So I've talked a lot about that with regards to astral implants, etheric implants, that kind of thing. And I state quite clearly on there that, they're real, but they're not inherently real. And I say that because I find a lot of people have made it very serious. And so a lot of people have worried about them, thought about them, and made it more and more of a truth, if you like, made it more and more real in this reality. And so it's become more and more a problem from my point of view as a healer, treating lots of people who've been worrying whether they have implants or not. And if things are getting better in this reality, if we are really creating better and raising our consciousness, why is it that that particular subject is getting more of a problem? Why is there more and more different implants being discovered? Why are they still around? Why is there more difficult ones being discovered that people say this or that about them not being able to remove them, or not being able to remove them without something else happening first, and so on and so on and so on. So, it's become more complicated, more of a problem. So I know a lot of people don't like that I wrote they're real but not inherently real. And I know a lot of people have interpreted that to mean that maybe I'm trying to say that they're not real at all and that they're delusional and that they don't exist. That maybe that's a psychological problem and not something that's out there. And that's an unfortunate thing. It's a big misunderstanding because, yes, they are real, they do exist. But what I'm trying to say is we are powerful creator beings, and we are, at least in part, creators of that reality, of parasites, of implants, of demons, and all the other different things out there. We are agreeing to that reality when we read about it in some sort of spiritual article, or talk to a healer or a psychic about it, and they talk about it. And I've been in that situation where I've looked up to these people who've been healers and psychics for many years, and I'm quite new to it, and thinking, oh wow, there must be so much more out there that I don't understand yet. And I start to agree with them and start to look for that, and I start to find that, and it becomes more real for me too. And as the years have gone past, I've realized, well, are they actually real? Are they actually a problem? What's my part in creating them? And I realized just by agreeing with them and looking for these things, they become more real and they become more part of this reality. And that's why there's so many people, especially those quite new to sensing things beyond the physical. There's a lot of fear and worry about them, and it becomes quite a problem. And for some people, it's been a problem for many years. They just can't seem to let go of that story of parasites, implants, demons, whatever it may be, being a problem. So I'm saying, if you are having a problem with demons, parasites, implants, that kind of thing, yes, I will take it seriously, because it's a serious problem from your point of view, And for a lot of people, they're not ready to completely let go of that. They don't know how to. They don't know if it's possible to let go of that story, and therefore that reality goes with it. And the main reason I feel that a lot of these things are a problem, and they have become worse, is because most people believe that there's only one truth. So, in this reality that we call 3D, we're taught in school that there's only one answer for a lot of scientific things, especially. You know, there's only one truth. And if you look around you and look at history, you will see that because people believe in one truth, that there must only be one answer, they're constantly fighting and arguing with each other, saying, oh, I have the truth, and then another group says, no, I have the truth. And in the astral, or if you like, things beyond the physical, it gets very complex because there is no one truth there. You get out what you put in. So whatever beliefs you hold on to, that's what you will experience when you go into the astral, when you go into the afterlife, when you go into the beyond physical, the ether, whatever you want to call it. And that's why, when you study near-death experiences, a lot of people of a certain religion, when they have a near-death experience, they will see certain figures, certain things that mirror their beliefs. They literally take their beliefs with them. And so when they come back, they think, oh, my religion, my beliefs must be the truth because that's what I saw on the other side. And then you get another group of people with a different set of beliefs, a different religion, if you like, and they have near-death experiences. And then they come back also saying, well, I only saw prophets from my religion, from my belief system. So therefore, that must be the truth. And so they fight with each other, not really realizing that you get out what you put in. You're a powerful creator being. So as a healer, it's really important to understand that, to know that the people coming to you don't necessarily see things the same way as you. And I can give you examples as I've learnt and grown as a healer over the years, especially in New Zealand. When I started as a healer, I was probably quite lucky that there was a lot of healers, a lot of psychics around, quite a big community back there in Christchurch in New Zealand. So hello to you if you're out there listening to this. I was quite lucky in a way that when I started sensing beings and started being curious and started trying to sense things beyond the physical, that when I did come across beings and different energies, there were other people nearby to validate whether or not I was sensing something. And what I noticed was that sometimes we would picture an entity or a particular energy problem in the aura exactly the same way, exactly the same colors, the same shapes, the same, helpers. They looked the same as what the other person described. But that a lot of the time, no, they looked different. We would describe helpers or other beings that we saw very differently. But we could verify, are you talking about the one that's standing to the right of that person's shoulder? I'm like, yeah, I'm talking about the being there to the right of the person's shoulder, but I see it as an ET sort of entity being, whereas you see it as a human, And sometimes we could say, hey, entity, wave for us, and we both see it in our mind's eye waving, but one person would see it, that being, as a human looking thing, another person would see it as an ET, some other person would see it as an angel. So those were the beginnings of me starting to realize, okay, what we perceive is filtered through our perceptions, through our belief systems, what we expect to see. And a lot of those belief systems aren't conscious beliefs necessarily. So if we say we believe one way, the subconscious, which is much, much more vast than our conscious mind, may believe quite differently. And so you really start to see what you believe deep down based on what you sense. So I hope that's a useful example. So I have a few things written down here. So hopefully that sort of helps you understand that, when I say something's real but not inherently real, everything is created. Everything isn't real, you know. It's not inherently real. It doesn't exist on its own. Everything is real because of us agreeing that something is there, and therefore it becomes real to us. So a very important thing to understand when you have clients come to you and they see things that you don't, or they describe it in a way that you see differently. So understanding that there are different realities based on our beliefs, based on our viewpoints, is important so that you can tune into their reality. Because quite often it's much, much easier, I have found, to tune into someone else's reality and help them within that reality rather than trying to pummel them and say, no, you're wrong. You should be seeing it like this. You should be seeing it the way I see it. So yeah, especially when there's some sort of demon problem or entity problem, it's much easier to go, okay, yeah, I see that, I acknowledge that, using the pretend technique. So you may not see it necessarily straight away, but you're using a technique, imagining it, making it as real as possible from your point of view, so that you can connect with them, so that they feel acknowledged, they feel like they're not crazy and insane. So they have more of a sense that you can help them. Because quite often there's a lot of resistance if you say, well, actually, I see it differently. Sometimes there's a lot of defense mechanisms in people's characterologies if you don't agree with them. Sometimes it's so strong that you can't help them because the barriers go up with them. You can't reach them, you can't connect with them. And so, they end up disappointed and wander off to some other healer, and then another healer, and another healer, and another healer. So quite often it's much easier to start off that way. And then when they feel better, when they feel the problem is resolved, you might sense that it's easier to start talking about some of these concepts so that they feel more at ease, or maybe not. There's no hard and fast rule here. Everyone's different. Sometimes it really is a lot better if you do bring someone more towards your belief system, because it's easier. I know from my point of view that everything's just an energy that we interpret in one way or another, and that gives me a lot of comfort. It's much, much easier to, let something go and for it to not be a problem, having my sort of belief system. Not very easy necessarily to get people to tune into my belief system and start to question things and be curious, to start exploring and testing their beliefs to see whether it would be better to see things the way I see them. Sometimes it's very difficult to do that. Sometimes I have been quite firm with people to bring them out of their reality. Because I've realized, especially if they've seen lots and lots of healers, lots and lots of psychics, they've, approached the problem from many, many, many different angles, and they still are fighting. They're still creating without them realizing this problem. And sometimes I've been quite firm and given examples and tested them through questioning and through taking them through meditations and different things to help them see whether it really is as much of a problem as they make it out, to see how real it is, so that they can start to see things my way. But I don't often do that because a lot of people are quite resistant. But sometimes it is necessary. So, yeah, whether or not to yank someone out of their reality or not is a tricky subject. It's not an easy question to answer. There's no right or wrongs to it necessarily. And sometimes you have to go through some hard lessons as a healer to work out, to be better at sensing whether someone can be sort of shifted or not. Okay. And when I say shifted to a different belief system, I'm not necessarily meaning that they have to agree with or believe the way I do. I prefer to word things in a way as if to say, I'm your catalyst for the change you want to happen. And that's very true. As a healer, really, all I am is a catalyst. They're the ones agreeing to the change or allowing the change. I can't force it on them, even though it may appear that I'm the healer doing the healing and they're just sitting back and letting it happen. There's at the very least some agreement from their point of view for that change to happen. It very much relies on them. So I'm a catalyst, and I would much prefer to be a catalyst for the change that they want to see, to take them into the reality they want, rather than forcing them into my way of thinking because it's the best and it's the only way. Okay. So I think that's a very important thing to get across with this pretend technique that I talked about in the last video. You've got to be very careful because your way of viewing things might not actually be the best for them. Just as much as them staying in that particular reality might not be the best for them. But yeah, be a catalyst for the change they want to see. So be curious, be questioning. Where do you want to go? How would you like life to be? How can I take you there? I'm talking quite a lot at the moment. Probably saying things in the same way over and over, repeating myself. So yeah, with the pretend technique in the last video, yeah, be careful. I was talking out loud to express what I'm doing so that you can understand how the pretend technique works. But as I said in the last video, it's probably not a good idea talking out loud about what you're doing, especially saying that you're imagining that there's something there when you don't feel it. And especially if you're imagining something like a demon there so that you can more easily contact with it, because like I said in the last video, they may go, oh, I felt better after Grant removed that demon, so demons must be true, it must have been a demon. And so that reality becomes more real for them, and then they go talk to their friends about demons. And they're much, much more likely that when they do feel some discomfort or some issue in their aura or their physical body, oh, it must be a demon. Yeah, you see the problem here. People are very creative, very powerful beings, and they make it more real. And so the whole issue of entities, demons, parasites, etc., becomes more real, more and more of a problem, rather than it just being some discordant energy. So yeah, be careful what you say out loud. If you have very open-minded people, yeah, you can talk openly about it, like I did in the last video with my wife, who understands me quite well, for example. So yeah, be careful whether you talk out loud about it or not. And that gets me onto I did mention the reverse pretend technique. So that is basically an extension of what I was saying about bringing someone out of their reality. Yeah, so the reverse pretend technique would be them, for example, saying, oh, I have an entity there, that's my reality, that's what I really see, it's really real for me. So the reverse pretend technique would be helping them to be curious about it, question it. Is it real? That would be the reverse technique. So it's real for them, now you're pretending it's not real. You're starting to play with it and ask yourself, is that real? And one of the first things that I help people question that reality with is questioning whether that entity, being, parasite, whatever, can actually harm them, can actually cause problems for them. So one really good question that helps people be more curious about it and start to realize that actually these things only have as much power over me as I give to them or believe they have, is simply asking questions like, okay, so you have an implant in your brain that's feeding thoughts to you, do you? Okay. Well, can you still, despite that craziness in your thoughts and the feeling in your head, can you still choose to get up at the right time in the morning? Despite supposedly it being very controlling? Can you still get up and brush your teeth and make sure you have a good shower so you're clean and still choose to have a healthy breakfast? Can you still choose and be able to drive your car to work? Can you still do your work? Can you still talk to people normally despite the crazy thoughts and the uncomfortable feeling? Can you still, in other words, make positive choices, choices that benefit you and help you grow, despite the crazy thoughts and the feeling in your head, as an example? And very often the case is, well, yes, I can. And so they start to realize, well, actually, if I'm able to make positive choices in my life for the betterment of me, despite what's going on, maybe it's not actually as powerful as I thought originally. So questioning, being curious, testing whether something really is true or not. Very, very important to help people make something less of a problem and start to bring them into a different way of thinking, a different way of perceiving things that they may not have come across before or thought about before. Anyway, I'm waffling on. I think I've probably repeated myself in several different ways on the same theme. I hope that's been useful, this video. Please do email me, leave a comment if you've got any questions about this particular thing. I'm more than happy to teach those who want more techniques to help people change reality. If you want, because I do like to teach. It's not just energy healing. So yeah. And if you'd like to support this channel, then please do like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.